The ZimaBlade 7700, a silent, low-power board that claims NAS-level performance in a package smaller than your hand. But can it really replace a Raspberry Pi or Intel NUC as your next home assistant server? In this video, I'm setting one up to find out. So what exactly is the ZimaBlade, and why might it be the next step up for your smart home setup? The ZimaBlade 7700 is a small x86-based single-board server built for people who want something between a Raspberry Pi and a full mini PC. It runs on a quad-core Intel E3950 processor, similar to the J3455. Supports up to 16 GB of DDR3L RAM and comes with 32 GB of built-in eMMC storage for the operating system. The board includes dual SATA ports, so you can add internal SSDs or hard drives directly for storage or backups. There's also a PCIe slot if you ever want to add a faster network card, or even a lightweight GPU for experimentation. It's got Gigabit Ethernet, USB 3.0, and power delivery through USB-C. And because it's passively cooled, it runs completely silent, which is perfect for something that's going to stay on all the time. What makes it particularly interesting for a smart home setup is that it's x86, not ARM like most small boards. That means it can run the full desktop version of Linux, Docker containers, or even virtual machines with far better compatibility and stability than a Raspberry Pi. It's designed for small NAS builds and home lab projects, and it comes preloaded with Casa OS, a lightweight Linux-based platform that makes managing containers and services dead simple. So in short, it bridges the gap between DIY tinkering and real server-grade reliability while staying compact, efficient, and quiet. Now that we know what it is, let's talk about why I'm using it for Home Assistant in the first place. Right now, my Home Assistant instance runs on a Raspberry Pi 4, which has been great, but it's starting to hit limits with add-ons, database size, and responsiveness. The ZimaBlade could be that next step. Better performance, proper storage options, and more flexibility without jumping to a full-blown NUC or mini PC. So the goal here is simple: to see whether this little board can become a capable, always-on smart home brain that stays cool, quiet, and dependable. I'm not expecting it to outperform a full-blown mini PC, but if it can stay cool, responsive, and stable while running Home Assistant 24/7, that's already a win. This test is really about reliability and efficiency more than raw power. I'll be running Casa OS straight out of the box, since it supports Docker and makes deploying Home Assistant fairly straightforward. For now, I'm keeping it simple. No external drives or services yet, just a clean Home Assistant install so I can get a feel for performance and stability before adding anything else. The network connection runs directly from my router, and I've applied a static IP so the device always keeps the same address. That'll make it easier to access remotely and integrate with other smart home devices later on. Once everything was up and running, I explored Casa OS and got a feel for Home Assistant performs on the hardware. The interface feels responsive, and even without extra storage, it's quick to navigate and load dashboards. Overall, it already feels like a solid step up from a Raspberry Pi. Smoother, faster, and with plenty of room to grow as I add more integrations and automations. After running it for a while, a few things really stood out, both good and bad. Let's start with what impressed me the most. First off, the ZimaBlade 7700 runs completely silent. There are no fans, and the passive cooling does a great job of keeping temperatures reasonable under light to moderate use. Casa OS also makes container management incredibly straightforward. You can install, update, and monitor apps from the web dashboard without touching the command line. It feels noticeably faster than my Raspberry Pi 4, especially when navigating between dashboards or editing automations. The extra CPU headroom makes the whole experience smoother and more responsive. And because it supports SATA drives and a PCIe slot, there's plenty of room to expand later, whether that's extra storage or adding a network card. But it's not all perfect. There are a few limitations worth mentioning. The single Ethernet port means no easy built-in redundancy or direct link aggregation. There's also no onboard Wi-Fi, so you'll need a dongle or wired connection if your router isn't nearby. Out of the box, it also feels a bit limited without extra drives. You'll want to add storage pretty quickly if you plan to run backups, media servers, or database add-ons. And while Casa OS is beginner-friendly, you'll still need to be comfortable with Docker and some manual setup if you want to go beyond the basics. Overall, my first impressions are really positive. It's not flawless, but it's clearly punching above its size and price point. Next, I want to see how it handles day-to-day automations and more demanding workloads. Now that it's been running for a couple of days, let's talk about how it's actually performing. Power draw sits between 2 and 2.3 watts, which is incredibly low considering it's running Casa OS, Home Assistant, Portainer, and MQTT all at once. It's sipping power while staying completely stable, even with multiple containers running in the background. Thermals have been rock solid. After 48 hours of continuous uptime, the temperature hasn't moved beyond 32 degrees Celsius. The passive cooling setup clearly does its job, and the aluminium housing helps dissipate heat quietly and efficiently. System resources are sitting comfortably low too. CPU usage hovers around 4 to 5%, and RAM stays under 10% out of the full 16 GB installed. That leaves plenty of headroom for adding more services later, things like ZigbEe to MQTT, Google Drive backups, or additional Home Assistant add-ons. Responsiveness has been great. Dashboards open instantly, automations trigger without delay, and switching between ESP Home, Portainer, and the Casa OS dashboard feels smooth and snappy. Even lightweight automations, like controlling my LED light, respond immediately. What really stands out is the consistency. Whether it's been running for 10 minutes or 10 hours, performance doesn't fluctuate. CPU and memory graphs stay flat and predictable, and there's no sign of thermal throttling or any sudden spikes in power usage. And that's what matters most for Home Assistant. It doesn't need massive processing power. It needs something reliable that just runs quietly in the background without crashing or overheating. The ZimaBlade has done exactly that so far. From here, I'll start expanding, adding ZigbEe to MQTT, setting up automated Google Drive backups, and slowly connecting more devices. But even at this stage, it already feels like a solid, efficient, and low-maintenance platform for Home Assistant, all while drawing less power than a light bulb. After spending some time with the ZimaBlade 7700, I'm genuinely impressed by how capable it is for something so compact. It runs cool, silent, and steady, using barely 2 watts of power while keeping performance consistent across the board. Home Assistant feels faster and more responsive compared to running on a Raspberry Pi 4, and even with multiple containers like Portainer, MQTT, and ESP Home, the system doesn't skip a beat. What stands out most is the reliability. It's the kind of hardware you can set up once and forget about. No noise, no heat, and no unexpected slowdowns. For anyone who wants a low-power, always-on system for Home Assistant or lightweight server tasks, the ZimaBlade strikes a perfect balance between performance, efficiency, and flexibility. Compared to other options out there, the ZimaBlade sits right in the middle ground. A Raspberry Pi 5 is faster on paper with its newer ARM chip, but it runs hotter, uses more power, and still relies on microSD or a single NVMe drive. The ZimaBlade, on the other hand, gives you proper SATA support, a PCIe slot, and completely silent cooling. Ideal for something that stays on all the time. It's not as powerful as a full mini PC or NUC, but it's far more efficient and easier to manage day to day. For Home Assistant, that balance of low power, quiet operation, and flexibility makes it a really practical choice. I'll be keeping it as my main Home Assistant host from here on out, and I'm confident it'll handle whatever I add next. It's not the most powerful board out there, but for the size, power draw, and simplicity, it's hard to fault. It's not flashy, it's not overpowered, but the ZimaBlade 7700 just quietly does the job, and that's exactly what you want from a smart home brain.